Well, welcome to Conversations with Cubit. Thank you for joining me tonight. I am excited about tonight's conversation, and I'm excited about tonight's guest. We are talking to one of the candidates for Oklahoma County District Attorney, very important position. And tonight is our second conversation with one of those candidates for this very important position. And if you missed last week's conversation, you want to go back and you can find those conversations or that conversation on my YouTube channel. Just jump back over to YouTube and look for Conversations with Cubit. It'll pop up. Be sure to subscribe. That's how we can get more of the information out. Browse some of the past conversations and find which ones you like. If you're new to these weekly conversations, welcome to the family. Yes, I call you family. We're excited that you found your way here, and we are streaming live right now. So I need you to do me a favor. Share tonight's conversation. That's right. Do not keep this conversation to yourself. We want as many people as possible to cast an informed vote. So you absolutely must share this conversation with your community. Hit the share button. Start a watch party. Do it. Do it right now. I'm waiting on you. Okay. Anyway, I got to give a special thanks to Green Pasture Studios because they have been hosting these weekly conversations for a little over a year out in their studio. My friends Richard and Amy James are running things out there in Spencer, Oklahoma, and I'm excited about all the things they do out there at that full-fledged movie studio. Yes, full-fledged movies, commercials, and even a training academy. Look them up. You'll be glad you did. But as you can see, tonight, we're not in the studio. We are in a very cool place, and I'm going to tell you more about this cool place in just a second. But before I do that, I need to tell you the purpose and the reason and the goals for these weekly conversations. One is I just want to add value to people in my community. Two, I want to inspire you to believe in what people and communities can become when we're willing to work together. And three, love people, period. That's it, no strings attached. All this means is I want you to be inspired, I want you to get useful information and resources, and I want to celebrate individuals, groups, and organizations who are making a positive impact on our community. Every conversation will be about information, inspiration, and hope. So listen, I am so blessed. I'm so blessed that I have the coolest people in town and as friends. And I get invited to some of the coolest places in town. And I want to share one of those places with you right now. Tonight, we are broadcasting from Mentality and Coffee, located at 6639 Northwest 36th in Bethany, Oklahoma. Yes, we were in Bethany last week. We're in Bethany this week. And this is not your everyday coffee shop or your online boutique. I mean, this whole concept is different. Oklahoma bred and family owned. The mission here is to create mental well-being while promoting self-care. A coffee shop, y'all. Not only supportive of your mental well-being, but also the caring for and about the well-being of our entire community. That's why a portion of every sale goes to support mental health organizations in our community. And as you can see, it looks great in here, and I can tell you it feels great being in here. Put this place on your list of places to visit. You'll be glad you did. Now, let's get started. It is a great honor for me to introduce to you my guest tonight. Joining me tonight is Miss Jacqui Ford. Jacqui is a lifetime Oklahoman, born and raised right here in Oklahoma County. She has 15 years of litigation experience representing victims of crime and defending citizens accused of crime, which makes her very familiar with every facet of the criminal justice system. Her website says she plans to bring new hope to our community, to aid in rebuilding relationship with agencies whose missions intersect with that of the District Attorney's Office. And not only does she have an impressive trial record and an award for excellence in trial advocacy, her experience ranges from serving as director on the board of Oklahoma Criminal Defense Lawyers Association to being a featured speaker for the Oklahoma Bar Association's continuing education programs. She's even taught a few police science courses at OSU. I know a little bit about that. I've been there. There is so much more of her bio that I could share, but why not allow her to do all of that for herself? Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to have joining me tonight none other than Miss Jacqui Ford. Welcome to Conversations with Cubit.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cubit. I'm really happy to be here.
Look, did you see what we just got?
Mentality.
Mentality, great service,
Yes.
great coffee. We've already been kind of dabbling.
Yeah,
You like this?
I do. It's so tasty. It's not
so-
your average latte.
Not your average place.
That's
so
right.
hats off to these people here and the service, and it just feels good in here, right?
It does, and I think it's real serendipitous. This is where you and I got to meet
Jackie,
tonight.
don't start using big words on me.
Sorry.
You better not do that. No. I know Alan, but don't. I gotta.
No, I think it's great because their mission is aligned with the mission that I've had in my practice and in my life for so many years. So I feel really lucky to be here, and I'm grateful that this is the place you chose for us.
I'm glad I got friends in high places that can open the spot up for us. So anyway, I want to dive right in. But if you've been following, as a police officer, I have these little ways for me. It's not for everybody else. This is just for me.
Sure.
Of getting to know people, and you just ask
Okay.
them these crazy questions, and you are being interrogated for the next 15
This
questions.
is the speed dating part
This
of
is
the
the
interview.
speed questions, right? I haven't told you. So did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did.
You did watch the Super Bowl. Okay. First question. Were you there for the Super Bowl? Were you there for the commercials or for the game?
I would say I was there for both. I'm a huge football fan.
Okay.
I love football, college, and NFL, so I wouldn't have missed it. But the commercials and the halftime show are certainly
That's the
certainly
bonus.
fun.
Okay.
Oh, for
all
sure.
right. Both. All right. Dr. Dre or Snoop? Pick one.
Ooh, that's tough. I'm going Snoop.
Snoop. Okay. Car or truck?
How about mid-size SUV, Cubit?
How
I
about
want the
pick
best of
one,
both
Jackie?
worlds. Car
Come
it
on.
is,
All right,
car
all
it
right,
is.
all
If I can't have it
all
both ways.
All right. Right. All right. Let's see. Handshake or hug?
I'm a hugger.
Hugger. All right. Barbecue or seafood?
Barbecue.
I'm getting to know you. Getting to know something about you here. All right. Vacation, Colorado or Florida?
Florida.
Florida.
I'm a beach girl.
Okay. All right. Scary movie or comedy?
Scary movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. No, I need to write that down. Okay. All right. Going on vacation, are you going to drive or would you rather fly?
I like to travel far, so I'm going to fly.
Fly. Okay. All right. Do you call it pop or do you call it soda?
I call it soda.
Soda?
Yeah.
All right. Are you originally from Oklahoma?
I am, but I really just only drink Diet Dr. Pepper. So
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I'm going to
All
call
right.
it Diet Dr.
Okay.
Pepper.
All right. You have an opportunity to volunteer for a day at one of these places. Which one do you pick? A daycare or senior center?
Senior Center.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. All right. Birthday party or wedding?
Birthday party.
Birthday party. Okay. Good, good, good. Stillwater or Norman?
Norman.
I'm not going to.
I went to both.
Okay.
So
I didn't say school. I'm just saying. I'm just saying we might have some fans here that might say something. All right. Let's go. Beer or wine?
Wine.
Wine.
Yes, sir.
Dog or cat?
Cat. I have both, but
Okay.
I have an office cat, so.
All right. Here's what
She's
I really know. This question really tells a lot for me. You're from Oklahoma. Do you call it Broadway Extension or I-235?
Oh, it's Broadway Extension.
Come on, girl. All right. Okay. All right. Tell us about you. That's fun. We get to know I know a lot about
that's
you.
a fun little warm-up. I
It's a
appreciate
warm-up.
that.
Right.
Only a couple of zingers in there that are going to get me in trouble. You kind of said I grew up in Oklahoma County. I was born and raised right here in Oklahoma City. I spent a little bit of time in Tulsa when I was in college, but Oklahoma City is my home. I grew up on the south side of Oklahoma City. My parents' divorce kind of created a situation which I moved around quite a bit in high school, but I graduated from Putnam City North. I knew I was college bound. I had no concept at that time that I would be a lawyer. I was the first person in my family to go to college, but certainly beyond college into a graduate level program. But I fell in love with the law when I was studying business at OSU. And so law school was where I was destined to be. And I couldn't be happier. I think it was a perfect choice for me. I wanted to be in service to the community. We'll probably get into some more of this later, but
Yeah.
I wanted to be the lawyer that I wish my family had when they were in need of counsel. And I just wanted to be able to be there for folks and help. I'm a helper.
That's good. So you have a practice. You've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
I got to ask you, why in the world would you want this job? Why run for the district attorney? I mean, there's going to be some high profile cases. There's the unknown of that. Which ones are going to be? All of them are hard or difficult. What gets you in this game?
I knew you were going to ask that question. It's a question I'm asked almost everywhere I go. And the answer for me is quite simple. I was called to do this. I was asked by my community to do this. Lawyers have been asking me to consider this opportunity since 2016. I said no then. I was still doing all the things I wanted to do. But I feel like we have a real prime opportunity right now. It's the first time in over 40 years that there's an open seat in the district attorney's office. I've spent most of my career practicing against David Prater in his office. And we have not always agreed, but I've respected a lot of the work that he's done. I know that this is a huge task. I know that there will be an incredible amount of pressure and criticism coming my way because we cannot please everyone. I have certainly been critical of choices he has made. I have supported choices he has made. But at the end of the day, I think it's time for Oklahoma County to have a change in voice and a change in vision. And I don't think there's another candidate more equipped to bring what Oklahoma County needs. I oftentimes tell folks, I have a great reputation for being an incredible lawyer, and I appreciate that. But I think the one thing I do better than lawyering is teaching, training, and mentoring. And I take a lot of pride in that role that pays me $0 in training young lawyers and educating lawyers and law enforcement officers and anybody who really affects the justice system. And the justice system is a whole lot bigger than prosecutors and defense lawyers.
Yeah.
It folds in law enforcement, it folds in bondsmen, it folds in mental health treatment providers, probation officers, and being able to create an environment where all of those agencies can come together with a shared vision of justice. I have some great ideas about how to change some policies in Oklahoma County that I think will benefit people, both the accused, victims, law enforcement, those critical of law enforcement.
I want to hear about those. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some really great ideas to bring positive change, and I think now is the time. And I'm the first woman to ever run for this seat, and I think it's time that the smoke-filled rooms and the good old boys and this is what I've always done, so this is the way we should always do it mentality needs to be changed.
Right. Was there an incident for me, and I ask this question of everybody because I know for me, the decision to get into the race, to put your life under the microscope of a campaign was really tough. But I remember the moment that I heard something on the news out of the office that I was seeking that I went, okay, enough is enough. This is the one that gets me in the race. Was there an incident or a series of things that made you go, I'm the answer, I'm the solution to this problem?
I think there are a number of things that I could point to. There's not one in particular. Mm-hmm. The amount of time, energy, and resources that I spend and that the district attorney's office spends fighting over nonsense is appalling to me. It's appalling the way we waste the limited resources that we have in the criminal justice system, both from their office, the judicial resources. I can't and would not intend to speak about an ongoing litigation that I'm in, but I'm in the middle of a mess right now where we have been defending this man for almost 6 years, and today I still don't have all the police reports, 911 calls, body cams. Today I'm still fighting over discovery. So who's getting justice in that scenario? It's a homicide case. The victim's family has hired a lawyer. They're intervening. They're exhausted. My client's family is exhausted. It is horrific, the lack of concern and compassion for truth that comes out of that office. And it's changed a lot over the years. It hasn't always been like that. But the district attorney's office has lost some really incredible, old school, professional, not just in it to win it lawyers that have either
That's a culture that you're describing.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
And
how are you going to change that culture?
Well, I think you have to change the culture from the top down. I live my life in a way that I bring people to the table. And I oftentimes ask DAs, even law enforcement officers, when can we get on the yes train? If I'm going to tell you the sun rises in the east, you're going to object and say that it doesn't. I mean, this is a waste of time, and it's not just, it's not fair to the people who are caught up in the system. We have to do better. So there are a lot of ways that we can do that, from rebuilding the relationship that office has with law enforcement, not just local police agencies, with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and a number of other agencies who feel like there is a rift between the two offices that are designed to work together. And if you are in constant litigation and battle with those you are called to serve, you know, you're investigating your own clients in the county commissioner's office, you're fighting the Pardon and Parole Board, you're fighting the YWCA. I mean, the YWCA, whose sole mission is to advocate for women and children and men who are victims of domestic violence. When your battleground is being drawn not only against the accused, but against every agency in which your office interacts with, something's got to give. And there's one common denominator, and it's the culture that's coming out of that office from the current leadership, which I anticipate will be perpetuated if we maintain, you know, status quo.
Right.
So being able to step in with new ideas and new visions of being able to have creative problem-solving solutions. My clients don't come to the table clean-handed every time. Even those who are falsely accused, we find what behavior we've engaged in that has led to someone being willing to falsely accuse us, and we address those underlying issues. We have to start looking at the criminal justice system from both prongs that we are called to serve. And when you imagine the Lady of Justice standing there, she has multiple roles. And the first one is that justice must be blind, not just blindfolded, because everybody knows what you can do with a blindfold.
Okay.
But justice must be blind. It must also be fair. And we must find a way to balance the two-pronged system, which is punishment and atonement for what we have done wrong, as well as rehabilitation, because 95% of the offenders are going to be back in our community, whether that's on probation or parole, whether that's, you know, pre-trial back in the community or post-trial, even those who are acquitted. Folks have to be treated as human beings and treated with compassion. Both the victims of crimes, the witnesses who are called in to testify, as well as the accused. And if we can't prosecute from a place of humanity, then we are not interested in justice, and that is a false flag that we're flying.
Okay, I feel you on that. But you did mention some partnerships, one in which that I am pretty concerned about personally. Being a police officer for the last 25 years, there's a case that may be having a rift between the agencies that you're talking about. There's police officers been charged, and
are we talking about the 5 officers in the Sadie and Rodriguez shooting? Yes.
Yeah, they've been charged, and that case will most likely still be in the courts.
No question that it'll be there.
By the time this you take office, should you win.
That's exactly right.
How do you handle this? Like, how do you keep law enforcement as a trusted partner while also holding them accountable? What do you, in cases like this, and I know it might be difficult for you to speak on this case, but what do you think about that case? One of the candidates has spoke up and said, clearly, I'm getting rid of that case, it's dumb.
Well, and I think all 3 of the other candidates understand the ethical problems with that statement, and he can say whatever he would like to say. What I would say to those officers and to their friends, and many of those officers know that I've talked to their lawyers and consulted and talked about the cases and the challenges that they're having. One of the primary challenges that those 5 police officers are facing right now, at least according to them and their counsel, is that they do not have access to discovery. And for you know what that means, but for those of us who don't, that's the police reports and the evidence. What is the evidence that you're bringing forward to prove my intention at this time? We have to provide discovery in a swifter fashion. That is the number one problem clogging up the judicial system in Oklahoma County, is the failure of the district attorney's office to promptly and timely turn over police reports. And they hold their hat on a statute that says they don't have to do it until 10 days before. No, that's the last day they have to do it, 10 days before trial. But the evidence is what the evidence is going to be. And by the time you have charged someone with homicide, you should be prepared to turn over all of the evidence. I, as a defense lawyer, cannot say to one of my clients, you have to plead guilty to this. The jury's going to find you guilty when I cannot review the evidence. I cannot tell them, don't put on a preliminary hearing and challenge the evidence when we don't know what the evidence is going to be. So in that particular case, I, like you, have probably only seen what's been released to law enforcement. My understanding from these officers' lawyers is that they have not been provided meaningful discovery, and that is a shame. And law enforcement should be given that same respect, whether they're charged or whether they're part of the charging process. Every defendant accused should have access to the evidence against them, and we should not be playing hide and seek and hide the ball with that. Now, the district attorney's office right now, if they were sitting across from me, would say, that's not true. And so now we're playing a whose fault is it?
Yeah, who's telling the truth?
Who's telling the truth? Either the law enforcement or the district attorney's office. One of the promises that I have made is that our office, part of the accountability and transparency of my legacy as a district attorney, will be that we comply with discovery early and often. If you are having multiple discovery hearings in front of a judge, that's going to create a problem for me. You're going to come answer to me as to why you're not turning this evidence over, because nothing changes. You've either got the goods to get the conviction or you don't. And if you don't, then let's own that now and find either a reasonable dissolution, or we sometimes just have to cut the case loose.
Right.
I don't know.
Doesn't the community want to hear, like, I know law enforcement wants that, right? We want to know that we have the support of the district attorney's office.
Yes.
in matters like this. But there's the other side too that says, I don't like the district attorney being so chummy with law enforcement. Where's the line? How do you what is your plan to give the community confidence that you will hold law enforcement accountable, at the same time support law enforcement and have law enforcement feel that we are being supported by your office? I
think it's a fair question, and I want law enforcement to feel supported. I'm the granddaughter of an Oklahoma City police officer. My father was in the Air Force. He was a general. I understand command. I understand law and order. I think the best way that we do that is we make all of our decisions from some core valued fundamental principles of honesty, integrity, transparency, and accountability. If my law enforcement officers are bringing me cases they can't support, if they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, then I want to have a conversation with them. This isn't going to fly here. This is what we need. You need to follow up on this investigation. Go interview this witness. Go do this thing. Right now, my understanding is there's not a lot of those conversations going on. They're either accepting them or they're declining them with very little communication. It's oftentimes passed off on the officer to contact the victims of crime and say they're not going to file. That's not okay. I don't think it has to be chummy. We're two different agencies with two different focuses, but the overall goal should be the same, and the goal should be justice.
Okay.
Equal justice, fair justice, and swift justice. There's nothing about what happened in the Stavian Rodriguez case that leads me to believe that these 5 officers in their minds conspired to shoot and murder this 15-year-old robbery suspect. They should be given the benefit of the doubt in that, and we have to look at what happened. And I've got some ideas on what happened, but they're just hypotheses, and I don't think it's fair to guess what's really going on when I don't have access to the information. But what I know is that when law enforcement is in trouble, I know who they call. Mm-hmm. And they call defense lawyers. And one of the things I'm tired of in this campaign is this messaging that putting a defense lawyer in office is somehow putting the wolf in charge of the hen house. Like, this is ridiculous. We're officers of the court. I'm not vouching for my client's behavior. My goal is to enforce the law against law enforcement, enforce the law against the district attorney's office, to ensure that justice is brought. And if my client is justly convicted, you're not going to hear complaints out of me. We have to build relationships of trust and respect. And when you don't have trust and respect, then I don't think that there's a way to move forward. It's going to continue to be strained. It's going to continue to cause community chaos. And it's going to continue to breed this distrust of everything that we're trying to do here. So we have a choice in this election, right? We have a choice that we can continue down that same path that we've been going down, that is flawed, that is riddled with scandal, that is riddled with prosecuting people who we don't agree with, or we can trust that the people who you come to when you or your loved one is at the most serious risk are going to honor that role, whether they're a defense lawyer or a prosecutor. And taking off my defense lawyer hat and putting on my prosecutor hat, I can guarantee that all of our cases will be handled with those fundamental principles: trust, integrity, accountability, and transparency.
Okay, so you obviously have you've dealt with discretion. You've been looked at some clients of yours, I'm sure, that says, I don't even know why this was charged.
Yeah.
I don't even agree that we should have gone this far with this. That tends to ask the question, prosecution discretion. Can kind of give us an overview of what that is and how it will be used in under your office.
It's a big, vague question.
It's big and vague, but
But yeah, I think I can answer it. So prosecutorial discretion is this concept that the prosecutor is tasked with deciding what charges they're going to file and against whom, and how do they make that decision, right?
Yes.
And prosecutorial discretion, I imagine, takes into consideration a number of things: the quality of the evidence that's being presented, past history of the accused, past history of the victim, you might think. And then they make a decision. The reality of the situation is our prosecutorial discretion should not be used to protect our friends, should not be used to cover up criminal activity of district attorneys that work in the office, should not be used to cast favoritism based upon the quality of victim that is present. And I've had the privilege of having a number of my cases declined to file out of that office. I do not believe that that comes from a chummy relationship with the district attorney's office there. I have a lot of respect and a lot of love for a number of those prosecutors, but there's nobody that's going to say that I'm getting any favors there. Those cases oftentimes are not filed because I have put an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort working the case ahead of time and getting that information to law enforcement. I call law enforcement officers and say, hey, before you take this downtown, let me give you this information. Here's my client's cell phone records that'll contradict that. Here's a Ring camera that's going to contradict that. Before you go file it, go talk to these 3 witnesses who you didn't get an opportunity to talk to on scene, but they have some valuable information for you. When we work in a search for truth and justice, it doesn't matter what hat I'm wearing. As a defense lawyer, I assist law enforcement often in a role as a defense lawyer. I also represent victims of crimes. And I can't tell you how many times I've also been in that very same DA's office demanding, why you're not calling my client back? Why are we not being informed? What's going on in the case? So we have to just care. And I recognize that it's challenging for some of these DAs to care because they're so overworked, et cetera, but we can free them up by stopping playing the games that we play, prohibiting people from justice.
Well, let me tell you the reason why I asked such a vague question. Because when I talk to community members, they have the same gripe, a common theme in the gripe about the criminal justice system. And for me, they're usually talking about law enforcement, but I always went, well, you know, we only do the arrest. There's other parts of the criminal justice system that you probably really ought to point out. And what they're saying is, in order for me to see the criminal justice system as legitimate, I need to know that those people or these people or certain people are not getting a certain deal that I'm not privy to. And what I mean by discretion is, I know my neighbor got arrested for the same thing, and this happened. Their consequence was this, and I got arrested for it, and my consequence was this. Or my son was arrested for that, and their son was arrested for that, and they got totally two different outcomes. And so
those community members have a legitimate and real concern.
Right. And so that's the reason for the question. But you also bring out, there's nuance too. They don't know the background. They don't know all the other things. How do you educate the community when to help them figure out that what you're seeing as illegitimate and fair is a lot of information you don't know that goes into making decisions on a case? How do you educate the community?
I mean, that's kind of tough, right? It's a lot of the conversations that I'm having around this campaign right now, is people don't know. And to be fair, this is not all community, because a lot of our community cares a lot, but a big portion of Oklahoma County voters do not know lickety squat about what's happening in the Oklahoma County justice system until it affects them, right? And so part of it is the media. What is the media story saying? Where are they getting that information? Is that coming from a leak in the DA's office? Are they just trolling the arraignments that day? Whatever it might be. We can't try our cases in the public, and that's a big problem. I know that office doesn't always agree with that, but that's not an appropriate place to try our case. But what I would do is invite people to come to the courthouse, ask questions. I probably field 20 questions a day where I'm just giving free legal advice, at least on an average day, to people who just don't know why. The problem is not everybody can call me and I can't talk to everybody, but the best I can do is be honest when we're asking these conversations. I've thought a lot about what the district attorney's website might look like. How can we better inform people about the process? How can people understand how these things happen? But their concerns are real. And the only thing I can say is I'm not now, nor have I ever been part of the good old boy system. And I am not now, nor have I ever expected favoritism from my friends in law enforcement or my friends at the district attorney's office. And I'm not going to turn that and it be different later. I'm going to listen. The human story is what matters.
Right. All right. You talked about transparency. You talked about what that importance, the importance of that. Talk to me a little bit about what misconduct looks like in the district attorney's office, because we never hear about we hear about misconduct in law enforcement.
Yeah.
We don't ever hear about it in the district attorney's office. What does misconduct look like in the district attorney's office, and how do you identify it, and how do you get out the bad apples? Because there's no bad apples if they're a lawyer, right?
I disagree.
Okay.
And on both sides, you know, and that's one of the things too, on your previous question, it really is in quality of your representation a lot of times. So many lawyers don't go that extra mile that I go. They don't do what I call as pre-filing representation, where we get in front of charges, and that's just an unfortunate nature of the business. But what does misconduct look like in that office? I mean, we're only here for an hour, right?
Okay. All right.
So I would say not being honest, withholding information, hiding evidence, lying about the evidence that you have that you don't have, coming in late in the game and saying to a judge, which just happens almost every week in Oklahoma County during jury terms, oh, judge, we just found this, 3,000 hours of jail phone recordings, or we just found, this video, we're just, oopsie, we're going to turn this over late. That's not okay. No, you didn't just find it. You darn sure know that you had it. And I've had conversations with law enforcement officers in cases where this is happening live in action in front of a jury, where new evidence is being presented that I've never seen, and the DA's office blames the police, and the police blame the DA's office.
So Jacqui, it sounds like you're willing to lose cases then. So as a prosecutor, you're willing to say, all right, let them go.
I don't know if I would say let them go. What I'm going to say is if the evidence isn't there to sustain a conviction, then we don't hold people on pretrial detention for a crime that we cannot prove. Part of the challenge is also is how we charge, right? So law enforcement goes, they make their arrest, they bring their blue sheets in for screening process, which isn't like it used to be anymore. You probably know that.
I'm old.
You drop it in a box now and sign it out, and you're not allowed to go in the DA's office. But you go in and you turn that in. Charging decisions, we need training in charging decisions. There's a culture of charging high to force a plea down. We saw that just this week in a very high profile case that's been charged as murder in the first degree, and here we are on the eve of trial, and whoo, all of a sudden it's not murder in the first degree. Well, that case has never been murder in the first degree, and everybody knows it. Everybody in that DA's office knows it, everybody in the community knows it. So why are we doing that? That's misconduct. That is using your prosecutorial discretion to abuse and detain someone to force them into a plea. Where else does it exist? Well, it exists in having inappropriate relationships with judges, which we see in Oklahoma County, that we are now alleging are rapes. These same prosecutors who are having these inappropriate and highly unethical relationships with judges who they're prosecuting in exist in the special victims unit of the district attorney's office. And to believe these allegations, you must, one, believe that they don't trust their direct supervisor and candidate for district attorney to go say, I'm in danger at work, that they don't trust Mr. Prater, that they don't trust the law enforcement officers who they have in their phone. You have to either believe that they don't trust that the system is going to protect them as officers of the court from violent, forcible rape in the courthouse, or you have to believe that that story is not true. And then you have to believe that nobody in the district attorney's office, including their supervisors, direct and all the way up to the top, didn't know that that was happening when everybody else in the courthouse knew. That is misconduct. It is abhorrent behavior. And that kind of behavior runs rampant in that courthouse. More often than not, it's embarrassing. I've had hearings in front of judges where we have threatened to expose all of that if the judge does not give us some sort of relief. There has to be relief so people have access to the courtroom. And the problem is 90% of Oklahoma County accused do not have meaningful, swift access to justice.
Jacqui, that's heavy. That's big stuff. All right, I'm going to move on because you're sending me to school here.
Sorry.
All right. We've all heard about...
I think I was supposed to say, oh, you know.
No, thank you very much. Okay, we've all heard about massive mistakes in prosecution and wrongful convictions. What measures will you put in place to ensure the integrity of all convictions?
Well, I think a conviction integrity unit is absolutely necessary in Oklahoma County, and have studied and talked to a number of folks who already have conviction integrity units. Watched a CLE just the other day from the Dallas District Attorney's Office who started the very first conviction integrity unit. There should be zero objection to that. If there's an integrity in the conviction, then there's not a single person who should question going back and looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. I think it's important. The number of people we see every month being released, having been exonerated from incredibly serious charges, it breaks my heart. The last time I looked at the number, I think the Innocence Project had released 350, and this was a couple of years ago when I checked those numbers. We have here in Oklahoma City an Innocence Project that is working on those very cases, and I think that it's important to go back and look, make sure that what we're doing is right.
So you're going to dedicate staff to just looking at...
Dedicate staff to a conviction integrity unit, for sure. Why would we not want to do that? Why would that not be in line with the search for truth and justice and equal justice?
All right, so I got to ask you this then. How do we judge the success of a district attorney? What would success look like after 3 or 4 years? Is it your conviction rate? How do we say that is a successful district attorney?
Is that my only choice in the multiple choice?
No.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, no.
Sure, I think some people want to look at a conviction rate. I think in Oklahoma County right now, based upon the conversation that you and I are having, I think a measure of success would be a rebuilding of trust. A trustful relationship in the district attorney's office, not only from the community standpoint, but also from law enforcement standpoint, from the accused. There are counties in Oklahoma that do not possess the controversy that Oklahoma County possesses, where that trust exists. And so for me, a measure of success is trust. Another measure would be lowering the amount of people who we are incarcerating unnecessarily. And there are certainly plenty of people that need to be incarcerated. But we have to look at the role of the justice system and say, are we prosecuting people we don't like, or are we prosecuting people we're afraid of? And utilizing the very limited taxpayer resources that are allotted to this cause to focusing on violent crime. And when you look at the conviction rate of the district attorney's office, you take away all the pleas, and you just look at jury convictions, I think you would be shocked at how many violent offenders are acquitted in Oklahoma County. And I believe that is a result of the lack of trust in the prosecution, the lack of efficiency in discovery, all of the things that we're talking about. I think if we're going to measure the success, we have to measure the human component of that success. Are we helping people who are offending rebuild whom they are, putting them back in the community better than they were when they came into our system? Are they going back to their families better fathers and mothers and brothers and daughters? or are they going back worse? And that would be a measure that I would want to look at. I want to measure the humanity of the justice system while holding a firm and strong deterrent role in violent crime. We have to focus our energy on violent crime and not the low-hanging fruit that allows the violent crimes to go ineffectively prosecuted.
All right, so would you address the racial disparity in our criminal justice system, and what role can the DA play in reducing that disparity?
Man, that's another big question.
That was not vague.
It's not vague. It's not vague. I don't think there's a person that is familiar with the criminal justice system that could look you in the face and say that there's not a racial disparity in arrests, in prosecution, and in incarceration. And we have to fix that. And I think that takes a community conversation and a community-wide effort. You're going to arrest more folks where you patrol more folks. You're going to prosecute more folks where you patrol more folks. You're going to convict more folks out of the community that you're patrolling and prosecuting heavily out of, right? We have to find a way to treat people with equality and humanity, regardless of the zip code that they live in, regardless of their socioeconomic status, and regardless of their race. It is impossible to look at our system and say that racial bias is not riddled throughout the criminal justice system. And all we can do is continue to just keep fighting against it. At identifying where bias creeps in charging decisions, where bias creeps in bond decisions, where bias creeps in plea recommendations and arguments to the jury. Where are we willing to give grace and where we're not? And it's a fair, real concern. Because
what do you do about training? Training, you talk about the racial disparity, the unconscious bias, so to speak. Where's there time, or where's an opportunity to train the entire DA's office and hold them accountable to that training on unconscious bias?
I think you can have weekly trainings, you can have monthly trainings, you can commit as much time to training as you as the district attorney are invested in doing. And I spend countless hours a year training lawyers, not only in Oklahoma, but across the country, facing a number of these very questions that you're asking. Racial bias, gender bias, socioeconomic bias, where does it exist and how can we root it out in the way we work, right? And we just have to focus on it. One of the things I train lawyers is the thing you're most afraid of is the thing you must run straight towards, right? You can't push it under the rug or hide it under the couch and pretend that it's not there. There's an elephant in this room. We need to run towards the elephant and figure out what it is. So the thing you fear the most is the thing you must run towards. And we have to focus that on training. We have to do it specifically through the district attorney's office. And I would hope the success of that would bleed out to other district attorneys and the DAC across the state.
You're going to lead the charge across the state in reducing the racial disparity.
I would certainly like to be the model of that change. And lawyers are required to do continuing legal education, just like law enforcement is required to do continuing education as well. And I, not having ever been a prosecutor, cannot tell you what's happening in those trainings, but as a defense lawyer, that is alive and well in our trainings, and it's part of what I try to implement into when I train lawyers, as well as when I try cases and when I represent people of color.
Yeah. So one of the things that popped up in my career was drug charges, and sometimes they were harshly punished. Drug charges were harshly punished, and as an officer, I see addiction as a source for many other crimes, right?
Most, I would say.
Many other crimes. What will you do to find the balance between accountability and rehabilitation? How do we? What's the approach?
So I think the best approach is to get there early and often, right? For years, as our drug court program was starting to develop in Oklahoma County, a big objection that I, along with other members of the community, had is that you were not allowed access into some of these alternative sentencing programs, whether it be community sentencing or drug court or mental health court, without having multiple felony convictions. Like, you had to have so many problems to even be considered there. We've started coming back on that, right? And we're starting to look at recidivism rates in a real way as to how can we lower recidivism rates. And we lower recidivism rates by addressing the root cause of what's going on. People who are addicted to drugs and alcohol almost without fail have a history of trauma. And part of implementing the, First Step Act is to address what are these underlying causes. How do we create a safer community for all of us, for all of our friends and neighbors, both offenders, victims, and anybody else involved. And we do that by identifying what is the trauma, what is the root cause going on behind this, and can we treat it? Most people don't have access or they don't know. And they're stuck in the addiction, their priorities are pretty limited and they have blinders on, and folks oftentimes don't have the resources to gain access. It's one of the huge problems in Oklahoma incarceration system is that we do not offer any meaningful treatment while the offender is in. So what are they doing all day? 24 hours a day, locked up with other criminals, not getting treatment, not getting education. We're just creating bigger problems. We're learning new bad habits. We're feeding into this idea that prison is designed to be nothing but punishment. It certainly has to be punishment. We want to deter people from wanting to come back. But while they're there, can we not better utilize their time to create a better person coming out on the back end? We have to address addiction. We have to lean into the programs that are already in place. Diversion Hub is an interesting new addition to Oklahoma County. I'm looking forward to seeing how successful they are in the long term. But the services that they're providing are directly related to what you're asking. What do we do? Well, we've got to get them in housing. We've got to get them treatment. What if they don't want it? And for those of us who know, and right or wrong, I've got some experience in that world. If you're a person that you love is not willing to accept help, there's no amount of loving help into them, And so we have to find ways to create a new option for them. And if that's in custody because they cannot and refuse to engage in the game, that's fine. But offering help should not be on their 4th or 5th or 6th offense. It should be much earlier on. We should address it early and we should address it often, because anybody in addiction and mental illness know that relapses are going to occur, people are going to slip, and we've got to be there to re-put them right back in. I mean, at the end of the day, we might all be adults, but we're just got a bunch of 7-year-olds running around inside us.
Everybody has value. Everybody has value.
That's right.
Whether they recognize it or not. All right. So I got a couple more questions I got to ask. But one of the questions that I want to ask is, there's a 10-day or so period for filing charges on a person. So I arrest. Send the charges over to the DA and say, hey, I found this is my probable cause. Are you going to file it? Right? Or I drop my sheet off at your office, whatever, however it goes. There's 10 days, but that person is sitting in jail for 10 days or up to 10 days for the district attorney to decide whether or not this charge is going to be filed or not. In that 10 days, I know I lose job, my car, the impound, all this stuff is happening in 10 days while I'm away from my
apartment,
family.
my kids are taken by DHS, all the things.
Everything. I can't take my kids to school. I don't know. All this stuff is happening in that 10 days. And what if the charge is not filed and then I come back to a wreck?
That's right.
Right? Address the 10 days. Is there a way to speed that up? Is that the district attorney's issue? Is that the agencies around because it's not just Oklahoma City Police Department, there's the village, there's Midwest City, there's all those things. What is the 10 days for, and how do you lower that number?
Can I give you a tiny bit of history on the 10 days?
Okay.
So something a little over 15 years ago, because I've banged my head against this wall my entire practice.
Okay.
The answer is that somewhere around 18 years ago, it was taking 30 days to get charges filed.
Okay.
And so people are, it's a lot of money and resources that are being put on the public defender's office back then to file motions, have them heard. You're not getting consistency in judicial rulings. So all the powers that be got together back then, and they negotiated for this 10-day rule. And it may or may not, I believe, exist in an administrative order in Oklahoma County, but it's a product of limiting us from 30 days to 10 days. And
so it's a practice, not a policy.
That's correct.
Okay.
And well, I mean, I think it's both. I don't know how to splice those words right now, but I don't want to get in the weeds. It's not statutorily mandated.
Okay.
Okay, it's not found in the Constitution or the laws of Oklahoma. This is an Oklahoma County created mechanism to speed up the process for law enforcement officers and the DAs to get charges filed. How do we solve it? Well, just in the last couple of years, this conversation has been going on for quite some time. The then presiding judge, who's not a presiding judge now, sat down with the district attorney's office with some influence from the public defender's office. And the public defender's office has long since argued that it should be reduced down to 5 days. I've spoken to law enforcement officers, not just in my role as a candidate for this office, but for years preceding. And every single law enforcement officer I've ever asked this question says I can absolutely get my charges to the DA's office faster than that. If the policy was 5 days, can you get it to them in 3? Yes. And you know this, there are very few cases that you're investigating longer than 3 days. So we just have to get the charges over there. How does the district attorney have the power to change that? Well, you invest more time in the charging pool. So currently there are, as I understand it, 3 people who are in charge of the charging pool. So law enforcement comes in, they screen with the district attorney, which used to be every week, different DAs would go sit down across the tables, they'd screen all those charges. We don't do that anymore. So once they agree to charge them or not charge them, they put that charging document into a secretary's file and it sits there until she gets around to it. So one of 2 things is happening. One, either there's not enough pressure being put on the charging pool, or there aren't enough people in the charging pool and somebody else can pick up the slack. So there are a number of areas in the district attorney's support staff and interns for that matter where we can get these charges filed. I can go file a VPO in 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And the DAs, many of the practicing district attorneys don't even know that can happen. If I want to sue you for a car wreck, I go write my $175 check and file my petition, and charges are filed immediately just upon presenting it to the court clerk's office. So we have to reduce that time. We're going to reduce that time. We're going to give benefit to not only the people who are charged, but also to law enforcement, the bondsmen, who are bonding these folks and then waiting for 10 days or waiting 10 days to see if they get bonded. The bond changes multiple times within that 10 days.
You don't even want to talk about the bond schedule?
Oh, I mean, we can talk about the bond schedule, the unconstitutional bond schedule.
Right. How is that set? How's the bond schedule set?
So it's set by administrative order. And so a presiding judge sat down with the influence from the district attorney's office and influence from the DA's office.
It's not random and somebody didn't just make it up.
Nobody made it up. I think it is not magic. It did not just appear one day. There's an administrative order filed here in Oklahoma County. It's 5 pages long. I have a copy of it if you want me to leave it for you for your reading pleasure later. But it identifies how the jail is supposed to set jail bail. And jail bail is different than bond. And I think it's a nuanced idea that people confuse. But if someone is arrested at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's not a judge on duty, then the jail has to have some way of letting them out if their family's sitting there with bond money. So they have this jail bail schedule. One of the ways that I think we overcome jail bail and this 10 days, I think can be handled in one really good way that meets everybody's needs, and that's putting a district attorney at a bond hearing. There's 0 reason that the district attorney's office cannot have an attorney assigned to do arraignments with, right now it's Judge McCrae, who arraigns every offender in the Oklahoma County Jail, and he attempts to get that done within 48 hours. I think he's doing a decent job of that right now. So within 48 hours, he's arraigning everybody. There's not a DA down there making an argument for bond. So the only real conversation that's happening is what does the judge have in the PC affidavit, and what level of communication is he having with an unrepresented person who's in custody, right? If we have DAs and defense counsel having a meaningful bond hearing, then a lot of these kind of concerns go away. People are not being held based upon their charge, but they're being held as the Constitution of the United States demands, based upon their own individual situation with these facts. So part of the people who advocate for jail bail is that it's consistent because everybody charged with burglary's got the same bond. Well, but not every burglary is the same.
Wow.
I had a bond hearing today that went from $75,000 to $15,000 because the judge was able to hear some evidence and some facts that were not available to the judge at the time of arraignment. So how do we fix all these problems? You assign somebody to the role and you think that it's important, And that role has not been assigned the entire time I've been practicing law. This is not a challenge. Why do we not utilize the courtroom at the jail, the Oklahoma County Jail? It was built for this very reason. Why is there not a judge? Well, you remember the good old days of night court. I have no opposition to going to court in jeans and a no tie and a button-down shirt and arguing bond at 3 o'clock in the morning. Even if we're not doing that, we can be having those conversations at 8 o'clock in the morning when we're all at the office.
Right.
And that's just a matter of caring. These policies change because the district attorney cares to change them.
It's good stuff. I got to give you an opportunity. I hate to ask this question, but I have to ask this question because almost every one of the candidates have come into, when they have made their announcement, to some controversy of some sort.
Oh, yes.
And when you announced, or when I heard of the announcement, I don't know when you did, but
Sure.
when you announced, there was some controversy in the news. Oh my gosh, she hates police and she got arrested and she said these crazy things about police. Will you address that?
Sure.
You have all the time you need.
Sure. Listen, when I made my announcement, the powers that be that do not want change and do not want any status quo went and utilized their, spidey senses and found and leaked to the Daily Oklahoman an arrest that I had over 12 years ago. That arrest exists and is a part of public record because I've chosen to leave it there. And that's because my clients need to know that they're not alone. I was arrested. I was wrongfully accused. I faced those charges, went to court, didn't even have to hire a lawyer, had an honest conversation with the district attorney who was in the case. They realized the truth behind what happened. I'm not interested in hashing all that out, but they recognized that what was presented to them by law enforcement was not an accurate reflection of what happened, and they dismissed the charges. And that's what should happen. I don't think it's controversial, and I'm not offended that you asked, and I appreciate you asking. Regular people get wrongfully accused in this country every day. Regular people get wrongfully accused in this county every day. And if we're unwilling to acknowledge that that happens, then shame on us. And if we're going to take that wrongful accusation where the state of Oklahoma, without interference from a defense lawyer, without a judicial order, said, I'm dismissing this, and try to wave it around as something that should make me untrustworthy, that's the kind of fear-mongering, offender-hating, shaming that has called me to run for this office. Do I have a history of being critical of law enforcement? Sure. I also have a history of being critical of defense lawyers who are lazy, who enjoy profiting on the back of this broken system. We pride ourselves at my office in not having repeat offenders. I can count on one hand in 11 years how many times I've had a client come back. And the reason that is because we invest in them early and often. And we do not carry around shame. There's a sign in my office that says, you are more than the worst thing that you have ever done. So law enforcement, when they make bad decisions in the heat of the moment where they should be granted grace, certainly are more than that one choice. Community members who have an emotional response to some of those choices and perhaps act in a manner that is not their best day are more than that choice. I am more than the bad choice I made 12 years ago. I refuse to be riddled with shame. To the folks who believe that in my role and my public criticism of some of law enforcement policies, I simply say I invite you to come talk to me about that. Mm-hmm. Because it's real easy to cast a stereotypical shadow over the work that I do. There are a number of law enforcement officers who I am proud to have supporting me, who are excited about my candidacy, that know that even though it's going to be a challenge, even though I'm going to hold their feet to the fire, even though it might be a little bit harder to get their charges moved forward, because I want to be sure before we take somebody's freedom and liberty away, before I lock you up in the Oklahoma County Jail, take you away from your family, away from your work, away from everything that you worked so hard for. I want to make sure that we've got the right guy at the right time, or the right girl at the right time. Those officers know that the level of trust is real here. They call when they're in trouble. They call when they need advice. I've had many of them say to me, I've learned more being cross-examined by you than in any program I've ever gone to in training. And I think that's why I think I bring a really unique perspective to the role of prosecuting, because I think it takes a village to demand community change. I think it takes the entire community to want it. I think it takes the entire community to get engaged in it. And I'm hoping that this is the time for Oklahoma County to lean in and get engaged. And what does criminal justice look like as we move forward? And it sure shouldn't look like prosecuting your political enemies. And it sure shouldn't look like covering up for your buds.
Well, you said a mouthful there, and I'm all with everything. I'm enjoying the conversation that I didn't even get to half of the questions on here. So as I enjoy my last couple of sips of coffee, would you look into that camera and make your last sales pitch and how we connect with you? How do we support you? How does anybody that wants to connect with Jacqui Ford and this campaign, this is your shot. That's the camera right here. Yeah.
The first thing I would say is I would encourage you to be engaged. Be curious. Look at this district attorney's race as if you had a magic wand and you could recreate the future that you and your community want. Who might be the best person for that? The district attorney's role, the local elections that we are seeing happening right now, affect more directly every member of this community than any national election ever will. So care, get engaged, research. If you are interested or anything that I've said has resonated with you in a meaningful way, come check us out on our website. Come join us on social media. You can find me on my website at4da.com. You can find us on social at Jacqui Ford for District Attorney. All of my contact information is pretty readily available. If you have questions, call me. My door is open. I'm here to answer them. Even the hard conversations, I'm willing to engage in. If you want to sign up. If you want to volunteer with us, we've got a great crew of volunteers that are out working every weekend and throughout the week. And, you know, if you really want to push the needle and you feel compelled to contribute, you can contribute online as well. Raising money is the least favorite part of any candidate's race, but is certainly necessary to push us through this primary. Thank you so much, Cubit.
Thank you for joining me and taking some time out, because I know right now you should be dialing for dollars. I know exactly what that's all about. So I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks so much for all of you for tuning in, and thanks to Mentality and Coffee right here in Bethany, Oklahoma. It's been very, very good. Thanks for hosting us here. Until next week, we have another DA's Conversation. Be informed. It's all about community. That's it for Conversations with Cubit tonight. Thank you.